Commander Sarah Chen surveyed the pristine training hall of the Galactic Defense Academy with a mix of amusement and determination. The polished obsidian floors gleamed under the artificial sunlight, and the training equipment, clearly designed for beings with far more appendages than humans, lined the walls like abstract art installations. As the first human combat instructor ever assigned to the academy, she knew her presence was already causing quite a stir. The morning's first class filed in, a diverse collection of the galaxy's most promising military cadets. Some slithered, others floated, and a few moved in ways that seemed to defy conventional physics. They arranged themselves in neat rows, their body language broadcasting everything from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Applications," Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the hall with practiced authority. "I'm Commander Chen. And yes, before anyone asks, I am indeed human." A ripple of movement passed through the assembled cadets, a tall crystalline being near the front, their form resembling a carefully carved diamond with limbs, raised an appendage that sparkled with internal light. "Commander," the cadet's voice chimed like wind through crystal, "there must be some mistake. According to our xenobiology studies, humans are a Class 3 species. Your skeletal structure is internal, your skin provides minimal protection, and you lack natural weapons." Sarah's smile widened. "Cadet Xylith." "Commander, Cadet Xylith, would you be willing to assist me in a demonstration?" The crystalline being moved forward with the confident grace of someone who believed their natural armor made them invincible. Several of their classmates chittered or hummed in anticipation. "The challenge is simple," Sarah explained, drawing a circle on the floor with her finger. The smart surface immediately created a glowing boundary. "Stay within the circle and keep me from entering it for 1 minute. You may use any natural abilities you possess, but no weapons." Xylith's crystalline form caught the light as they moved into position. "Commander, I must warn you, my outer layer is rated to withstand small arms fire. I don't wish to cause you injury." "Noted," Sarah replied, her expression neutral. "Begin." What happened next would be discussed in the Academy's halls for cycles to come. The human moved like water, flowing around Xylith's defensive stance. When the crystalline cadet attempted to use their superior mass as a barrier, Sarah used their own momentum against them, her movements precise and economical. Within 15 seconds, Xylith found themselves outside the circle, their internal crystal matrix vibrating with confusion. "Would anyone else like to try?" Sarah asked, not even breathing hard. A Merskian cadet stepped forward, their 6-limbed feline form rippling with enhanced muscles. This time, Sarah let them attack first, dodging their lightning-fast strikes with an almost casual grace. The Merskians' claws found nothing but air as Sarah wove between their attacks, finally using their own momentum to send them tumbling out of the circle. "The first lesson," Sarah announced to the now silent hall, "is that strength, natural weapons, and defensive capabilities are only as effective as the techniques used to apply them. Humans may lack crystal-hard skin or retractable claws, but we've spent our entire history learning to overcome such disadvantages." She gestured to the various training equipment around the room. "In this course, you won't just learn to fight. You'll learn to think, to adapt, and to use whatever advantages you have, natural or learned, to their fullest potential. Every species here has incredible natural gifts. My job is to help you understand how to use them effectively." A tentacled cadet near the back raised an appendage. "But Commander, how can you teach us to use abilities you don't possess?" "Excellent question," Sarah replied. "Tell me, does a flight instructor need wings to teach navigation? Does a tactics instructor need to be able to mentally process 1,000 scenarios simultaneously like a hive mind to teach strategy? Understanding and application are different skills." She moved to the center of the training hall, her posture shifting subtly. "Humans have something unique. We're pattern analysts, adaptability specialists. We've studied every fighting style in the galaxy, not just for defense, but for understanding. I may not have your natural armor," She nodded to Tylith. Or your incredible reflexes, a gesture to the Merskian. But I understand how they work, their strengths and limitations. The rest of the class passed in a blur of demonstrations and explanations. Sarah showed them how different body types could take advantage of their unique characteristics, pointing out strengths they hadn't considered and weaknesses they needed to guard against. By the end, even the most skeptical cadets were engaged, asking questions and volunteering for demonstrations. As the class filed out, Sylith lingered behind. "Commander," they chimed softly, "I owe you an apology. I made assumptions based on incomplete data." Sarah smiled. "That's why we're here, cadet, to learn from each other. Besides," she added with a wink, "making assumptions about humans has been a galaxy-wide tradition since we joined the Federation. We're used to it. Will you teach us the throwing technique you used on Cadet Mersktal?" "Tomorrow," Sarah promised. "But first, we need to discuss how to adapt it for crystalline physiology. Believe it or not, I've been thinking about that since I first reviewed the class roster." As Sylith left, Sarah began preparing for her next class. The day's challenges were just beginning, but she was ready. After all, proving humans were more than they appeared was practically a species-wide hobby at this point. In the corridor outside, she could hear the excited discussions of her students, their voices mixing in a cacophony of different tones and frequencies. The word human featured prominently, but now it was spoken with a note of respect rather than dismissal. It was a start. The Academy's mess hall buzzed with conversation as Sarah navigated between tables, her tray balanced carefully in her hands. 2 weeks had passed since her first class, and the initial skepticism had evolved into a peculiar mix of respect and fascination. She'd grown used to the stares, some curious, others still wary. Tylith waved her over with a crystalline appendage that caught the artificial sunlight, creating miniature rainbows across nearby tables. Sarah had noticed the crystalline cadet had become something of an unofficial ambassador between her and the student body. "Commander," Tylith chimed as she sat down, "the others have questions about today's training session." The others included a diverse group of cadets. Mersktal, the 6-limbed feline whose pride had recovered remarkably well from their first encounter. Kest, a hovering cloud of intelligent plasma contained within a specialized environmental field, and Drax 427, a silicon-based life form who moved like flowing mercury. Today's session was unexpected. Drax 427 vibrated, their surface rippling with confusion. "You had us practice failing." Sarah took a bite of her synthesized protein bar, specially formulated for human consumption, and nodded. "Not failing. Learning to fall. There's a difference. But why?" Kest pulsed with genuine curiosity, their plasma form flickering various shades of blue. "Many of us can levitate or have natural shock absorption. When would we need such skills? Tell me." Sarah leaned forward. "What happens when those abilities are compromised? When you're injured, exhausted, or your natural defenses are neutralized?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. In their heart of hearts, each cadet knew their natural abilities weren't infallible, but it wasn't something they liked to consider. "Humans," Sarah continued, "learned early that we couldn't rely solely on our natural capabilities. We had to prepare for when things go wrong. Sometimes, surviving isn't about being the strongest or most naturally gifted. It's about knowing how to handle failure without being destroyed by it." As if to punctuate her point, an alarm suddenly blared through the mess hall. Red emergency lights began pulsing along the walls, and a computerized voice announced, "Warning. Environmental system malfunction detected. Gravity controls failing in sectors 7 through 12. All personnel implement emergency protocols." The mess hall erupted into chaos. Most cadets had never experienced true gravity failure. Their training simulations always occurred in controlled environments with safety measures. But Sarah noticed something worse. They were in Sector 9. "Everyone stay calm," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. Remember your morning training. Scythe, anchor yourself using the crystalline formation technique we practiced. Mursktal, use your tail for balance. Kist, adjust your containment field to compensate. As the artificial gravity began to fluctuate wildly, Sarah's students reacted with practiced precision, applying the useless techniques they'd learned that morning. Kylith's crystalline form extended anchoring points into the floor. Mursktal's tail worked like a gymnast's bar, helping them control their trajectory. Kist's containment field pulsed rhythmically, maintaining their position despite the gravitational chaos. Sarah herself moved with fluid grace through the shifting gravity, helping other students who hadn't taken her classes. Her movements were precise, controlled, a demonstration of everything she'd been trying to teach them about human adaptability. This, she called out while helping a tentacled student secure themselves, is why we practice for failure. Because when systems fail, when natural abilities aren't enough, technique and preparation make the difference between panic and control. The emergency lasted 17 minutes, an eternity when dealing with gravitational fluctuations. When the systems finally stabilized, Sarah's students had not only survived without injury, but had helped protect others in the mess hall. I understand now, Scythe said afterward, their crystalline forms still vibrating slightly from the experience. You weren't teaching us to fall. You were teaching us to adapt. Humans, Mursktal added, their fur finally settling back into place, seemed to have made an art form of turning disadvantages into advantages. Sarah smiled. We had to. Earth isn't just one environment. It's thousands of them. We couldn't evolve natural defenses for every situation, so we learned to adapt to all of them. That's what I'm trying to teach you. Your natural abilities are incredible, but they're not the end of your potential. They're the beginning. Later that evening, as Sarah filed her daily report, she included a special commendation for her students. They had learned one of humanity's most important lessons. True strength isn't about being naturally equipped for every situation. It's about being able to handle situations you're not equipped for. The next day's class was full to capacity, with even senior cadets requesting to audit the session. Word had spread about how the falling practice had saved lives during the gravity failure. As Sarah looked out over the eager faces, some scaled, some crystalline, some barely visible to the human eye, she felt a surge of pride. They were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their muscles or bones, but in their endless capacity to adapt, learn, and teach others to do the same. The attack came without warning. Sarah was in the middle of demonstrating a complex defensive maneuver when the Academy's battle station's alarm screamed to life. This wasn't like the environmental system failure. The pulsing red emergency lights were accompanied by the distinctive sound of shield impacts. This is not a drill, the Academy's AI announced, its usual calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. Multiple hostile vessels detected. Orbital defenses engage. All cadets report to designated safety zones. All combat-qualified personnel report to defense stations. Sarah's students looked to her, their various anatomies displaying universal signs of anxiety. She'd never been prouder. Instead of panicking, they were waiting for instructions, trusting her leadership. Remember your training, she said, her voice steady. Kylith, take point with the crystalline and silicon-based cadets. Your natural armor makes you our best defense. Kist and other energy-based beings coordinate with security to reinforce vulnerable systems. Mursktal, gather the agility specialists. You're our rapid response team. The space pirates had chosen their moment well. With the Academy's senior class away on field exercises, the facility's defense force was at minimum strength. As Sarah led her students through the corridors, the impacts grew stronger. The pirates weren't just testing the shields. They were looking for weak points. Commander, Kylith's voice chimed with unusual tension. Orbital scans show they're using Krixthar raiders. Those ships are specifically designed for boarding actions. Sarah nodded grimly. The pirates weren't just attacking. They were planning to invade. The Academy's advanced research labs would fetch a fortune on the black market, to say nothing of the potential hostage value of the galaxy's elite military cadets. The first breach came in Sector 4, near the Auxiliary Power Core. Sarah and her makeshift defense force arrived just as the pirates were cutting through the emergency bulkheads. The invaders were a mix of species, all heavily armed and armored. "Defensive Formation Epsilon," Sarah called out. Her students moved with practiced precision, creating overlapping layers of defense. Crystalline beings in front, energy manipulators providing support, agility specialists ready to strike from multiple angles. The pirates burst through the bulkhead, confident in their superior numbers and equipment. They weren't expecting to face organized resistance from cadets. The first wave met a wall of crystalline defenders who shrugged off their weapons fire. Kist and other energy beings interfered with their targeting systems, creating chaos in their ranks. Sarah moved through the battle like water through rocks, her human adaptability on full display. Where others saw chaos, she saw patterns. When a pirate's weapon proved effective against one type of cadet, she quickly reorganized the defense to compensate. Her voice carried over the din of battle, calling out adjustments and warnings. "Commander," Hall called out, their fur bristling with combat excitement. "They're trying to flank us through the maintenance ducts." Sarah's mind raced through the Academy's layout. The maintenance system was designed for repair drones, too small for most species, but humans were remarkably compact compared to many galactic citizens. "Hold this position," she ordered. "I'll handle a flanking attempt." She moved through the maintenance system with practiced ease, her smaller size now an advantage. The pirates had sent their smallest members, a team of Vexri, whose serpentine bodies were well suited for tight spaces. They weren't expecting to meet anyone in the ducts, let alone a human combat instructor. The fight in the maintenance system was quick and decisive. Sarah used the confined space to her advantage, demonstrating why humans were considered one of the galaxy's most dangerous close combat specialists. The Vexri, despite their natural weapons, found themselves outmaneuvered in 3 dimensions by someone who treated gravity as a suggestion rather than a law. When Sarah emerged from a different duct behind the main pirate force, she brought chaos with her. The invaders, suddenly attacked from behind by what they'd assumed was a soft species, broke formation. It was all the advantage her students needed. Hizilith's crystalline form blazed with reflected weapons fire as they led a charge that shattered the pirates' front line. Hall's rapid response team struck from multiple angles, their natural agility enhanced by Sarah's training. Kist and the energy beings created havoc in the pirates' systems, turning their own technology against them. The battle for Sector 4 ended decisively, but it was only the beginning. As Academy security forces arrived to secure the prisoners, long-range sensors detected more raiders dropping out of hyperspace. "They're bringing reinforcements," Drax 427 reported, their mercury-like form rippling with concern. Sarah looked at her students, tired but proud, each having proven themselves in real combat. "Then we'll be ready for them, because that's what humans do. We prepare, we adapt, and we teach others to do the same." As if in response, the Academy's eye announced, "Attention all personnel. First wave of hostiles neutralized. Second wave detected. All combat-qualified personnel maintain battle stations." Sarah smiled at her students, ready for another lesson in human combat techniques. The answering chorus of affirmatives came in a dozen different species vocalizations, but the meaning was universal. They weren't just students anymore. They were warriors, forged in the heat of battle, led by a human who had taught them that true strength comes in many forms. The Academy's command center hummed with activity as Sarah and her top students coordinated the defense against the second wave of pirates. Holographic displays showed multiple enemy vessels approaching from different vectors, trying to split the Academy's remaining defenses. "They're learning from their first mistake," Sarah observed, studying the tactical display. "Instead of concentrated force, they're trying to stretch us thin." She turned to her assembled team, each chosen for their unique capabilities. But so are we. The past 4 hours had transformed her combat class into an effective fighting unit. Word had spread through the academy about how a human instructor and her students had repelled the first assault, and now other cadets were requesting to join their defense force. Gilith's crystalline form refracted the holographic light as they analyzed the enemy formation. Commander, their attack pattern suggests they have inside information about our defensive capabilities. They're targeting known weak points in our shield grid. Then we'll give them something they don't expect, Sarah replied, her eyes showing that distinctive human glint that her students had learned to recognize, the look of someone about to turn a disadvantage into an advantage. Kest, how many energy beings can you coordinate simultaneously? The plasma-based cadet pulsed thoughtfully. With current power levels, perhaps 20. Why? Because we're going to rewrite the book on space station defense. Sarah's fingers danced across the tactical console, highlighting specific sections of the Academy's structure. In every major battle in human history, victory often went to the side that could adapt faster than their opponent. Time to show these pirates why humans are considered unpredictable. The next hour was a flurry of preparation. Energy beings were positioned throughout the Academy's power grid, ready to redirect energy in ways the system's designers had never intended. Crystalline cadets modified their formations to create living shields that could refract weapons fire. Even the environmental systems were repurposed, with Merskhol's team ready to use sudden gravity fluctuations as a weapon. When the pirates launched their second assault, they found an academy that seemed to defy physics itself. Energy beams were caught and redirected by coordinated teams of plasma beings. Boarding parties breached hulls only to find the artificial gravity working against them, while crystalline defenders remained anchored and lethal. Sarah moved between defense stations, coordinating the response with a stamina that amazed her alien students. Hours into the crisis, while many species were showing signs of fatigue, she seemed to be gaining energy. Commander, Drax 427 vibrated curiously during a brief lull. How are you maintaining this level of activity? Our scans show your body is operating far beyond normal human baseline readings. Sarah managed a tired smile as she checked another tactical display. Humans have something we call second wind. When we're pushed to our limits, we sometimes find we have more to give. Our bodies are built for endurance, for pushing through exhaustion when we have to. Is it some form of biological enhancement? Kest pulsed with curiosity. No, Sarah replied, moving to adjust a defense pattern. It's just how we evolved. On Earth, before we had advanced weapons or tools, humans would hunt by literally chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can keep going long after most species would have given up. The display suddenly flashed red as 3 more pirate ships dropped out of hyperspace. These were larger, better armed. Clearly, someone had decided the Academy's resistance needed to be crushed definitively. They're bringing in capital ships. Xylith chimed in alarm. Our shields can't withstand that level of bombardment. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. Her students had learned to recognize this expression too, the look of a human seeing patterns in chaos, finding solutions where others saw only problems. They're expecting us to either surrender or fall back to our final defenses, she said, a plan forming. So let's do neither. Kist, gather every energy being who can still function. Xylith, I need your crystalline team to modify their formations. We're going to create something the pirates have never seen before. As Sarah outlined her plan, her students' various expressions shifted from doubt to understanding to excitement. It was crazy, dangerous, and exactly the kind of adaptive thinking that humans were famous for. It's technically possible, Kest pulsed thoughtfully, but the energy requirements will be massive, Sarah finished. But those capital ships are carrying enough power in their weapons to do the job for us. We just need to help them direct it properly. As the pirate capital ships moved into position for their final assault, they faced what appeared to be a desperate last-ditch defense. What they couldn't know was that every energy being in the Academy was linked together, their containment fields modified to create a vast, invisible web. The crystalline defenders had arranged themselves in precise formations, ready to act as living prisms and power conduits. When the pirates fired their main weapons, intending to overwhelm the Academy's shields, they instead triggered a trap that could only have come from a human mind. Their energy weapons were caught, channeled, and redirected through a complex network of living conductors and prisms, turning the pirates' own power against them in a dazzling display of improvised physics. The battle ended not with a surrender, but with a lesson about the danger of underestimating humans and those they trained. As the pirate ships drifted powerless, their systems overloaded by their own weaponry, Sarah finally allowed herself to rest. You see, she told her awestruck students, sometimes the best defense isn't about having the strongest shields or the biggest weapons. It's about being able to think differently, to adapt, and to turn your enemy's strength into your victory. In the days following the pirate attack, the Galactic Defense Academy buzzed with activity of a different kind. Assessment teams, military officials, and even a few Federation diplomats arrived to study what the media was calling the Academy incident. But what fascinated them most wasn't the defeated pirates or the innovative defense strategies. It was how a single human instructor had transformed a group of cadets into an effective fighting force. Sarah found herself in the Academy's Grand Hall, standing before the Galactic Defense Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from every major spacefaring civilization, their attention focused on the seemingly fragile human before them. Commander Chen, the council elder, a being of pure thought housed in a crystalline matrix, began. Your actions during the crisis were unprecedented. You turned academic theory into practical combat application with students who had never seen real combat. With respect, Elder, Sarah responded, I simply helped them understand something humans learned long ago. That true strength isn't about having the best natural defenses or the most powerful weapons. It's about adaptation, creativity, and the willingness to keep pushing forward. Actually, now standing as a student representative, stepped forward. Their crystalline form had changed since the battle, developing new facets and patterns that reflected their experiences. Before Commander Chen arrived, we all thought we knew our limitations. We defined ourselves by our species' natural abilities. She taught us that such thinking was itself a limitation. Chest pulsed in agreement, their plasma form showing the complex patterns of advanced emotional expression. Humans don't see barriers the way other species do. Where we see immutable laws of physics or biology, they see challenges to overcome. It's unsettling at first, then inspiring. The council chambers filled with murmurs as various representatives discussed these observations. Sarah noticed how the conversation had shifted from the tactical aspects of the battle to something more profound, a fundamental reassessment of human potential. What the commander taught us, Murskal added, their feline grace now complemented by a new precision of movement, wasn't just about combat. It was about understanding that every perceived weakness can become a strength if viewed from the right perspective. The council elder's crystalline matrix pulsed with interest. Commander, our initial assessments classified humans as a Class 3 species due to your apparent physical limitations. Recent events suggest this classification may need revision. Sarah smiled, recognizing the historic significance of this moment. Perhaps the classification system itself needs revision, Elder. No species should be judged solely by their natural capabilities, but by their potential to grow, adapt, and overcome challenges. A very human perspective, the Elder observed, amusement tinging their ethereal voice. Exactly, Sarah replied. And that's what makes humans different. We don't accept limitations, we challenge them. We don't just adapt to our environment. We learn to thrive in it, then teach others to do the same. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The pirate attack had done more than test the Academy's defenses. It had challenged fundamental assumptions about species capability and potential. Based on these events, the Elder announced, the Council proposes two changes. First, the establishment of a new combat training protocol based on Commander Chen's methods to be implemented across all galactic defense facilities. Second, a revision of our species classification system to include adaptive potential as a key metric. As the announcement was met with widespread approval, Sarah looked at her students. No, her fellow warriors now. Each had grown beyond their original limitations, learning to see themselves and their capabilities in new ways. They had proven that the greatest strength wasn't in natural abilities, but in a willingness to push beyond perceived limitations. Commander, Tylith approached after the council session, their crystalline form catching the light in new, complex patterns. What you've taught us, it's more than combat techniques or defense strategies. You've shown us how to think like humans. Sarah shook her head, smiling. No, I've shown you how to think beyond what you believed possible. That's not a human trait. It's a trait of anyone willing to challenge their own limitations. As she walked through the Academy's halls later that day, Sarah passed new classes of cadets training under her former students. She heard snippets of instruction that made her proud. Don't focus on what you can't do. Find a way to make your supposed weakness your strength. Think beyond the obvious solution. The pirate attack had changed more than the Academy's defense protocols. It had evolved the galactic understanding of potential itself. And as Sarah watched a crystalline instructor teaching a plasma being how to use their containment field in ways its designers had never intended, she realized that this was humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. Not the ability to overcome limitations, but the vision to see beyond them entirely. In the end, the pirates had inadvertently helped prove what Sarah had been teaching all along. That true strength lies not in what you are born with, but in what you choose to become. And in that lesson, the entire galaxy had grown stronger.